Spider Mech, nothing more to this little joke. But what I do have are the best mech indie games across third-person action, roguelites, strategy, ARPGs and more, so let's begin with World 2, the sequel to a popular mining roguelite, but built on that foundation, having you venture deeper into the endlessly mysterious world, piloting your robo-spider through procedurally generated mines to find hidden technologies that could change everything. You need to gather resources, tinker with powerful upgrades for both your exosuit and your giant spider mech, and get creative with combat to survive the horrors lurking within the wall. Navigate various biomes, mining for resources and rare relics used in the upgrade system, having to deal with enemies from within the mines and on the wall itself, not to mention gigantic leviathans. There's a hub area with various characters, and you can select different missions for each run, with their signature pixel art being gorgeous as usual and has been very well received since the launch in November 2025. A more traditional mech game is Gearbits, a fast-paced third-person mech shooter that goes all in on mobility and firepower, dropping you into a distant colony world overrun by giant insects and hostile pilots. Choose between 10 unlockable robots with their own strengths and gameplay styles, from walking tanks with absurd firepower to lighter frames built to stay flying around enemies. They're all equipped with rocket boosters that let you blast into the air, strafe at high speed and dive bomb enemies, but overheating leaves you stuck on the ground like a sitting duck. So the combat has a good rhythm of firing and strafing, but also backing off if your heat gauge gets too high. The game features a 20-mission campaign set on a far future frontier, mixing objective-based missions with big enemy waves where you fight both monstrous bugs and rival mech pilots using their own specialized loadouts. It also gives you more than 30 weapons to play with missile launchers, railguns, beam cannons, and plenty of futuristic weapons, so you can experiment by mixing different setups of mechs and weapons. And if you want something endlessly replayable, the Wave Survival mode lets you fight escalating hordes while earning credits to buy new gear mid-run, so fans of the more arcadey Gundam games will have a blast with this one. If you want more replayability, try the twin-stick action roguelite Go Mecha Ball. This game mixes combat with pinball physics, turning every arena into a chaotic playground where you're constantly bouncing around and blasting enemies. Pilots one of 4 mechs, each with its own weapons and abilities, and instantly shift between walking mode where you can shoot, dodge and use abilities like most twin-stick shooters, and the ball mode where you roll across ramps, slam into enemies and launch yourself through the air with ridiculous speed. The game encourages the use of this mechanic, filling its stages with fans, rails, springboards and dynamic obstacles that turn fights into a mix between a shooter and Sonic doing spin dashes. There are more than 50 upgrades, 25 weapons, and over 20 special abilities, letting you build everything from missile spamming artillery mechs to meteor crash bruisers that use gravity as a weapon. Each of the 4 worlds comes with its own enemy types and hazards, ending in big boss fights that push you to combine movement mastery with your build choices. It also has a strong audio-visual identity with saturated neon colors and an interactive soundtrack that changes as you play, being a high-speed, flow-state kind of game, as you seamlessly chain rolls, jumps and shots together. Another mech game carried by its physics is GALAK-Z, a physics-driven shooter inspired by classic anime and old-school arcade dogfights. You play as a lone pilot thrown into hostile space, trying to survive squads of enemies that actually flank and coordinate between them in an intelligent manner thanks to its reactive AI system. Drift through asteroid fields while boosting between laser bursts, firing missile volleys, and even tossing foes around with your mech. As you explore, stealth helps you dodge enemy patrols, but fights get intense fast, so learning the ship's momentum-heavy controls becomes its own rewarding skill curve. Levels are procedurally generated, and every run rearranges the hazards, enemy types and item drops, while you collect resources to upgrade your weapons. Choose between arcade mode, where you can retry missions freely, and rogue mode, the most punishing mode where you lose everything on death. The game comes with the Void DLC included nowadays, which adds endless runs, daily challenges, and online leaderboards, and is an underrated hidden gem. A retro action platformer with outstanding pixel art is Panzer Paladin, an 8-bit style sword-focused adventure where you pilot a hulking piece of power armor and beat demons with their own weapons. Play as Flame, an android squire who jumps into the Paladin suit to stop a global invasion led by the demonic Weapon Keepers. Slash through side-scrolling levels, blocking attacks, swapping between dozens of melee weapons, and breaking weapons to unleash powerful spells. Weapons are everywhere, so you're encouraged to throw them, shatter them, and experiment with the rock-paper-scissors weapon system to counter enemy types. At any point, you can eject from the Paladin and control Flame directly, using her agility and laser whip to swing across gaps or recharge your armor before hopping back in. The game lets you choose from various themed stages, each packed with enemies, secrets, and bosses, plus a challenge mode that adds extra rooms designed to really test your control over both styles of play. There's also a full blacksmith system where you can forge custom weapons and even share them through Steam Workshop, which is a fun touch. Tribute Games, the developers behind this one, have made many successful action games with striking pixel art like Mercenary Kings and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge, so if you liked any of those games, you'll absolutely love this one. Mech Armada is a post-apocalyptic turn-based roguelite tactics title where you command a squad of fully custom-built mechs against a brutal alien enemy known as the Swarm. The game pushes you through a series of grid-based battles, picking the right mech parts, weapons, and abilities to survive each encounter. Manage your limited resources, read the enemy behavior to anticipate their moves, and use the terrain to your advantage. Each mech is assembled from dozens of possible components, letting you field anything from flamethrower brawlers to missile platforms, drone carriers, or precise long-range ray gun units, where experimenting with new builds is a big part of the fun of this game. Arenas are much more limited here as compared to other tactics games, and you eventually face massive boss creatures that must be defeated with both tactics and planned mech design choices. Every run uses procedurally generated levels and randomized encounters, losing the run only when your entire party is wiped out, but it is a roguelite, so that is to be expected, and it's fun to go try again. Another interesting turn-based tactical roguelite is Mainframe Defenders, a retro-style title that puts you in charge of a squad of prototype robots inside a research facility overrun by a dangerous computer virus. Defend the Stargazer facility by clearing infected nodes, destroying fabricators, and grabbing valuable data as you delve deeper into the complex. Each mission plays out on small maps and corridors where positioning and item synergies matter a lot. Combat is simple but no less fun, since you have plenty of strategic options at your disposal. For example, you can cause enemies to overheat, melt them with corrosion, use different debuffs, or just overwhelm enemy robots with the sheer number of bullets. The game has an interesting upgrade and customization system for your units, since items boost stats, but they also change how your units function, with many interactions that you can stack and synergize to make powerful builds in a way that feels similar to some deck builder games. Many items also come with drawbacks, so you can experiment with high-risk, high-reward strategies. Each enemy type is built to counter specific tactics, so relying on only one trick won't carry you forever. Runs last as long as you survive, and when you fail, there is still progression through new units, loadouts, and items. The visuals are really unique, and they go for an 80s PC terminal aesthetic with a synthwave soundtrack that fits the retro-futuristic vibes as well. Wolfstride is a stylish mecha-themed RPG that went a little bit under the radar in 2021. You follow a trio of ex-criminals who inherit a beat-up mech called Cowboy and decide to enter a prestigious giant robot tournament as a last shot at turning their lives around. Explore Rain City as Dominic Shade, take on odd jobs, meet a cast of weird characters, and slowly uncover the group's messy past. Between story beats, you return to the hangar where you can repair the giant mech, install new parts, and tune its weapons to get ready for the next opponent. Fights happen one-on-one in the arena, with a typical turn-based JRPG combat system where you can move Cowboy around the battlefield, target specific mech parts, and choose when to pressure the enemy or to play defensively. The game stands out with its black and white anime visuals and a surprisingly emotional underdog story mixed with silly, over-the-top humor, and as one of the more memorable stories among the mech games out there. Mech Engineer is a minimalist, dark, sci-fi mech management simulation title where you oversee every detail of your squad's machines while fighting a mutating alien bioweapon. Build the core of each mech, selecting pistons and injectors to boost reactor output while managing temperature to avoid system shutdowns at the wrong moment. You can then fine-tune each weapon, balancing rate of fire, accuracy, energy cost, weight and damage to match the kinds of enemies you'll face. Once assembled, your max weight and energy limits then force you to make tough trade-offs as you finish up the design. There are also many pilots to choose from, and their skills, stress, and emotional state matter just as much as your engineering choices, and both mechs and pilots can be upgraded separately. Combat is semi-automatic with an active pause, so you can give orders and then watch your squad execute them against the alien horrors. There's also exploration outside of battles, travelling through a ruined world to scavenge for resources or taking on missions to fund your operations. The game is a little unintuitive to grasp at the outset, so you need to spend time reading the in-game manual or to refer to Steam guides, but once you get past that, it's a fascinating title without anything quite like this on the market. If customization with tons of different parts is your favourite thing about mech games, then you should check out Metal Bringer. This is an action roguelite with unique real-time pixel art visuals and giant mech combat, where you build your own android soldiers called Labors and make them pilot massive mechs called Arms into battle. Play as Surya, a girl who awakens from a 1000-year cryosleep to find humanity has vanished, so she immediately begins piecing together the Labors and Arms to explore what's left of the world. Customize both the soldiers and mechs with swappable parts, app discs and enemy parts, then throw yourself into horde-based fights where you'll face waves of foes while your builds grow more refined. Between runs, you gather app discs from defeated enemies, analyze and unlock them for future labor builds to get stronger over time, while arms parts can be salvaged from destroyed enemies and reverse engineered to craft the mech of your dreams. The procedurally generated levels and randomized enemy encounters keep things fresh across runs, and while losing does mean that you drop the temporary upgrades, the permanent unlocks still carry over. Its visuals are something you really won't see in other games, featuring real-time ray tracing and some weird shaders that makes the game look like real-time pixel art and is stunning, with this developer also making Samurai Bringer, another underrated action game but set in feudal Japan, with this being a worthy sequel. Vampire Survivors clones are everywhere, with one of the most popular examples for mech games being Project Lazarus, a bullet heaven roguelite where you pilot a mech on an alien planet and try to survive waves of alien monsters. If you're not familiar with the genre, bullet heaven roguelites are a subset of the top-down action roguelite, but instead of a bullet hell title where you have to avoid enemy projectiles, you are the source of said projectiles, blast through hordes, collecting crystals and items for in-run upgrades. And when you get blown up or complete a level, there are permanent upgrades to carry into future runs as well. There's also a strategic layer to it, since different mechs handle slots and upgrades very differently, with each playable mech having their own control scheme, passive abilities and customizable weapon slots, and like other games in this subgenre, it is great for some mindless, quick fun. Mecha Knight's Nightmare kind of came out of nowhere in 2021, and is a gritty action game that lets you pilot highly customizable mechs to fight apocalyptic hordes in a war-torn future. The protagonist is a NATO pilot in the year 2049, at the peak of the Second Cold War, and gets caught up amid a sudden outbreak of horrific monsters and demons after the world descends into chaos. Gameplay focuses on blasting through large swarms of nightmarish creatures, using the loadout of your mech as you pick from dozens of parts like air support modules, Gatling guns, mine throwers, and cooling systems to build a machine suited to how you want to fight. The mechs themselves are also customizable, as there are over 20 parts that you can change, so you can make a long-range sniper, a close-range bruiser, or anything in between. Through the 20-mission single-player campaign, you'll scavenge weapons, gear up your mech, and upgrade it to survive the increasingly brutal confrontations. The game takes a lot of mechanics from Armored Core, so managing cooldowns, engine heat and positioning is critical, and it's actually a one-man passion project, so even if it is not the most ambitious or polished title, it is still a pretty incredible achievement with a sequel in the works as well. Astebreed Definitive Edition is an older title but still holds up surprisingly well, and is a sleek shoot-'em-up with anime-inspired robot combat. You play as Roy Beckett, piloting a bipedal war machine through sprawling alien landscapes and fighting a relentless mechanical alien race that threatens all of humanity. The game is a lot more cinematic than most shoot-'em-ups, so the stages switch all the time between 2D and 3D perspectives, giving it an epic feel when combined with the high-energy soundtrack. Combat lets you shoot from afar, tag targets with a laser to launch homing missiles, and even close in for devastating melee kills with your sword. There's also a bit of progression in the form of upgrades and new weapons, but does lean more in the arcadey direction. The Definitive Edition adds a ton of features like improved visuals, higher resolution textures, extra episodes, a controller-optimized interface, rearranged enemy patterns, and additional music, making this an oldie but a goodie, so don't miss out. Another older title is Project Nimbus Complete Edition, a third-person mech action game built for speed, style, and epic aerial battles, where you participate in different battles over the planet and in space with a sprawling storyline that covers 3 different factions at war. Pilot some of the fastest mechs, choosing from a dozen different robots, each one outfitted with everything from lasers to missiles to gravity cannons, flying through urban cityscapes, ruined towers, and sky-high platforms as you fight rival battle frames and other air and ground threats. Boss battles are visually spectacular, with nuclear mechs in space, groups of deadly pilots, giant flying ships, and more. However, customization is extremely limited here, with the entire focus being on combat, which combines high mobility dogfighting with strategic target prioritization. The game also has a bonus survival mode and a war front mode that offers some new missions and difficulty levels where the visuals just look so good with the sleek angular mechs and awesome lighting. If you ever wanted your own mech waifu, then you should check out Doll's Nest, a 3D action game set inside the massive, decaying factory world of Hod. You play as a mech girl dropped into a crater full of abandoned machines, collapsed structures, and hostile armored patrols. There are some Souls-like inspirations here, with the combat being a bit slower than other third-person mech games, with the game throwing vague and cryptic pieces of lore at you. All zones have different bosses that unlock new areas and occasionally trigger special events that hint at the world's larger mystery. Progress also comes from finding upgrades, mech parts and items. Customizing the mech girls might be of interest, since besides changing the frame parts and weapons, you can also customize their haircuts, face and body, being one of the more notable releases of 2025 and is very armored core. You'll notice that anime and mech games do go hand in hand, with another title of interest being Hardcore Mecha, a brutal 2D action platformer with quite the amount of variety in gameplay. Jump into giant mechs equipped with boosters and guns, blasting through 18 levels in a story-driven campaign, taking you from mining shafts and submerged cities to towers and even space. Besides the mech action, there are also on foot, underwater and space shoot-'em-up sections for added variety. The level design supports aggressive play, but smart pilots will use positioning and timing as well, taking advantage of the tight and responsive movement. Instead of customization options, you are selecting from over 42 different playable mechs in this game, with RPG elements like step points to allocate, with the sheer variety in designs alone being very impressive. A new entry from 2025 is Star Vaders, a tactical roguelite deck builder, which is a slick blend of grid-based mech combat and roguelite card strategy. Pilot a customizable mech to fight off an alien invasion, but in this one, you build your playstyle from a massive pool of cards and artifacts. Each mech feels completely different to use, and they all come with different playable pilots, each one bringing unique abilities, resulting in a bunch of different combos which are fun to try. Battles take place on a small tactical grid where you position your mech, fire off abilities, dodge attacks, and chain card effects to pull off huge turns. When you mess up, you can spend chrono tokens to rewind time, undoing a bad decision or lining up a perfect combo, which gives the game an interesting risk-reward mechanic. Earn new cards, artifacts, and upgrades with each fight, slowly shaping your deck to deal with the threats ahead. The campaign unfolds in multiple parts and even hides a secret finale if you dig deeper, and after that, there is endless replay value through daily runs, challenge modes, and increasing difficulty modifiers, recently releasing a big 2.0 update which added a whole bunch of content and is one of the better games of 2025. Another title with a recent update is Phantom Brigade, a turn-based tactics title that has both turn-based and real-time elements, which is one of the most unique parts of this game. Here, you'll command a squad of mechs fighting to reclaim their war-torn homeland, play as the last surviving pilots of the brigade, relying on stolen enemy gear, salvage parts, and whatever resources you can scrape together to stay one step ahead of a much stronger occupying force. Combat revolves around a clever prediction system where you can preview enemy movements, cue your own actions on a timeline, and then hit execute to watch the entire plan unfold in real time. Missions range from ambushing convoys to sabotaging enemy equipment or liberating towns, and wiping out the enemy often means blowing stuff apart thanks to the fully destructible buildings. There's a giant mobile base that you can manage between fights, using it to choose where to strike on the map, how to allocate resources, and which upgrades or weapons to install on your mechs. Customization is really deep in this game, letting you fine-tune loadouts to build specialized rigs, also including cosmetic customization, and is quite the looker. The 2.0 update fleshes out the pilots, adding over 100 unique traits and abilities, reworked the campaign, overhauled the overworld, and added a ton of quality of life updates thanks to feedback from the community, so if you skip this at launch, now's a great time to jump in. I don't usually include early access titles in lists like this, but I'm confident in the quality of Lightyear Frontier, which is absolutely crushing it. It's a peaceful open world farming sim where you pilot a powerful mech to settle on a homestead on a lush alien planet. Your mech works as a versatile tractor that can plow fields, water alien plants, harvest crops with mechanical tools, and even build structures as your farm grows. Explore a sprawling frontier world solo or with up to 3 friends, gather alien resources, tame strange wildlife, and continually upgrade your mech's parts and mod chips to improve its farming capabilities. With time, you'll be able to expand your rural base into a thriving exo farm, unlocking new buildings, upgrading your gear, and refining your mech's performance to handle even more complex tasks. The first-person view from inside the mech and the hands-on mechanics to repair the individual mech parts increases the immersion, mixing cozy farming with some light crafting and exploration, where the complete absence of combat is a very interesting take on the mech game. This has been chugging along in early access with many free content updates, giving off a little bit of a Slime Rancher meets Satisfactory vibe and is pretty great. The most extensive mech customization game in this list has to be M.A.S.S Builder, in which you pilot a fully customizable mechanical assault skeleton suit and take the fight to an alien threat called the Quarks. Play as the commander of a private military company trying to help humanity survive after mysterious void creatures wiped out much of the population and turned the planet into a battlefield. Combat is fast and flashy as you fly across wide open arenas and smash through swarms of smaller enemies before taking on the giant ones that will aggressively chase you. Unlock new parts and gradually expand your arsenal, but to some people, the main appeal is still the customization system. There are something like 38 points on the mech which you can customize, swapping out parts as you see fit, which also extends to the weapons. You could easily spend hours making a mech, fashion mech if you will, and while these do have implications on the stats, I do see people making mechs and then using the photo mode to pose and create sick looking shots, and is a very pretty game. One of the most beloved mech games is Brigadier Upped Armored Edition, an isometric shooter where you pilot hulking machines through a grimy cyberpunk war zone and level an entire city in the process. You play as a mercenary, betraying your own planet for a massive payday, dropping into the city of Solo Nobre at night to dismantle an autocratic regime, earning money from the destruction you cause, and spending it on new vehicles, weapons, and challenges. There's a huge roster to experiment with, from fast hovercraft to slow armored walkers, each with their own loadouts and fun tools, such as the active camouflage of the mongoose to the massive cannon of the praetor. Controls feel tight as you navigate the city, picking the right angles to unleash overwhelming firepower on enemy tanks, infantry, and heavy artillery, where almost every building and wall can be crushed or blown apart, letting you carve your own path through the world. Freelance mode lets you build custom runs across many maps, while the campaign offers a more curated set of missions with extensive modding support, which is keeping the game alive after all these years. A sequel called Brigadier Killers was announced in 2019, but there doesn't appear to be much news since then, with the developer kind of going dark on social media, but as of March 2025, they are releasing audiobook tie-ins to this sequel, which is interesting, so I honestly wonder when we'll get news on this. We cannot talk about giant robots without mentioning Planetary Annihilation Titans, one of the OGs in this space, with the developer being crazy enough to release an RTS in 2015 when people were saying that the genre is dead, and somehow managed to pull it off. This is a standalone expansion that takes everything the base game did and dials it up to absurd solar system-wide levels. Command armies that number in the thousands across multiple planets over land, air, sea, and even in space. Build fast, expand faster, and wipe out anyone that stands in your way. The new Titan-class units are the highlight, colossal machines like the Atlas Walker or the Zeus airship that can flatten entire bases by themselves, giving you some of the biggest and most absurd levels of destruction of any RTS. You can even literally destroy planets with lasers, asteroids, or the Ragnarok Titan in this game, so how's that for Epic? There's a lot of history here since the development team has roots going back to Total Annihilation and Supreme Commander, mega-scale RTS titles that were impressive for their time, and that shows in this game, being fine-tuned and updated over the years, and is one of the best RTS titles on the market right now, with a community of players that still seems to be rather active. A tactical mech auto-battler worth a look is Mecha Ball, where victory comes from reading your opponent and adapting your loadout through trial and error. If you played Totally Accurate Battle Simulator, you already know what to expect, being the same thing in concept but more self-serious and tactical. Customize units in the workshop to tweak their strengths, access new tech or discover new tactical synergies, then arrange them in formation, place them on the battlefield and hit the go button. Once the battle starts, everything plays out automatically, and your units will shoot missiles, lasers, shrapnel, and cause explosions across the entire battlefield. As you play, you learn to anticipate enemy builds, counter their formations, and rearrange your units to punish their mistakes, making every match a little bit of a mind game. Interestingly, this was first published by Paradox, but the developers managed to extricate themselves from the agreement, but then later signed with Dreamhaven, a developer and publisher headed up by Blizzard co-founder Mike Morhaime and other ex-Blizzard people, and seems to be doing well with post-launch support. A base building action RPG that is just awesome is The Riftbreaker, mixing base builder, tower defense, survival crafting, and relentless hack and slash ARPG action. Play as Ashley, a soldier scientist inside a fully geared mech suit, having to build a massive rift generator in order to return to Earth. To do that, you have to create sprawling production chains with mines, refineries, power plants, research labs, and also defensive walls, because every new structure pushes the environment further out of balance, making the planet treat you like an invasive threat. Expect huge alien swarms coming from every direction, so your towers, barriers, and traps matter just as much as the weapons you wield with your mech. Exploration also plays a central role, sending you into varied biomes filled with rare resources, strange wildlife, and extreme weather that forces you to set up remote outposts, linking them together through rift technology in order for the resources to get to where they need to go. The game offers a massive campaign, plus a survival mode with escalating waves of enemies and a sandbox mode that lets you tweak everything from enemy aggression to weather or resource abundance. This has been very successful to the extent that they released 3 paid DLC titled Metal Terror, Into the Dark, and Heart of the Swamp, also essentially rebuilding large parts of the game to add co-op support in a free update, and is absolutely amazing what they managed to accomplish with this game. I love the first Pacific Rim movie, so that main theme constantly plays in my head whenever I boot up Into the Breach, a roguelike tactics title from the developer of FTL Faster Than Light, and they are 2 for 2 with making some absolutely amazing games. You play as a squad of time-traveling mech pilots having to save humanity from the Vec, an unstoppable swarm of giant insects erupting from beneath the earth. Choose a team of 3, mixing and matching mechs from different theme squads if you so desire, each with unique abilities that push, pull, shove, and blast enemies around the grid. Every action matters because the maps are tiny and there are civilian buildings to protect, where the twist here is that enemy attacks are fully telegraphed so you can see what they are about to do and can counter accordingly, or make tough decisions as to which attack to let slip through. As you progress, you unlock new pilots with powerful traits, discover dozens of weapons, upgrade your mechs, and experiment with new mech squads with some of the best isometric pixel art that I have ever seen, and is easily my favorite mech title. Watch this video for more of the best indie games.